Hey everybody, welcome to Investing in Cannabis. I'm your host, Brandon David. As always, great show this week. We have Barry of Greenbits, which is the POS compliance software for dispensaries, one of the biggest ones. You may remember that we had Ben, the founder of Greenbits, on the show way back in 2015, if you want to check that out. Great episode with Barry this week, though. We talk about scaling everything up. Really interesting case study of how to transition from the founder to a new CEO and why that happens, when that's happening, and his job now, how he takes the vision from Ben and sort of brings it into the future and scales everything from product, support, sales, of course, remote culture during quarantine. Really great episode, guys. I think you're going to like it. I learned a ton. You're going to learn a ton. Tune in, listen up, get acquainted. Barry, so nice to meet you, man. Thank you for joining us remotely. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We had the former CEO, Ben, on. This is some time ago, maybe like 2015. I think he was in the first 10 episodes or so. But there's been a little transition over at Greenbits, and you've taken over. But let's start over just from the beginning. What is Greenbits?
So Greenbits is a SaaS-based service that does point of sale, inventory tracking and traceability and compliance filing for cannabis dispensaries.
Got it. And you originally started in the POS space. That was really the first angle for Greenbits in. Kind of why the expansion there? It seems like a lot of the softwares are kind of becoming more general rather than more niche as we progress.
Yeah, and Ben, the founder and CEO, I mean, his vision was always to solve around inventory and compliance tracking, actually, because that is a core problem if you're running a dispensary, a legal dispensary, it's a licensed dispensary. That's a fundamental problem that these small business owners have, is tracking product and filing and not having that take over all of their time, because they want to actually run the store right? and
Yep.
Handle customers. But staying in compliance and filing with the government is a big deal. And so from the outset, Ben had the vision of solving that problem. And the way to do that is to be running the whole point of sale and inventory system together for a company, because they're so intertwined.
And it's been very successful. I saw you're in 1,200 dispensaries today. You're one of a couple names that a lot of people know in the POS space. We won't talk about the other ones for now. I think it's a really interesting sort of example or case study for people that are have their own startup. Is like, when is it time to bring in a new CEO? Right? Like Ben had this vision, he grew it a lot. I guess the question, I know you started back in December, how did that decision get made, and why now, I suppose?
Yeah. So I wasn't here for the decision because I'm sort of at the end part of that. But I've talked to Ben quite a bit about it. And Ben started a company before called Outright, actually, that was in the accounting, small business accounting space. And he had done a similar transition where he brought in another CEO, and then that business was eventually purchased by GoDaddy. And so this is, I think, a journey that Ben has been through before and had some familiarity with. And when there's the right time, it's always something you sort of have to feel out. But I think I got a sense that Ben loves the early problem solving and the building things fast and solving problems for customers fast, and sort of chasing the next customer, because it helps you understand what to go build to make more customers happy. And he's really good and brilliant at it. The company started to grow and scale in size, where you need to have a more focus on managing teams and setting goals and making sure everyone knows what they're working on, so that you're coordinating work across a larger team of people. And I think, frankly, that's a little less exciting for Ben. He wants to still be, doing the new problems and building code and writing stuff. So when you sort of feel like the job starts to get too much of that, I think was sort of an indication of, okay, it's time to maybe think about the transition.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, they're different skill sets in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. We don't have that many mature businesses in cannabis industry yet, right? This is very common. This happens over and over again. And you have a rich technology background. I'm sure you've seen this time and time again, as people are just good at different parts of it. But it does require sort of a little bit of an ego check, right? I mean, I think one of the most famous is Travis Kalanick. He didn't really want to step away from Uber or whatever. I mean, that really speaks to who Ben is, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's and it is super common in especially Silicon Valley and VC funded startups. This happens quite a bit, and it's a pretty natural thing. And to Ben's credit, he was so gracious through all this. He's still involved in the company. He's the chairman of the board. I still consult with him regularly, so he's still helping the company be successful, and he led this whole transition and made it happen. So I give him a ton of credit for how he approached this, and having the presence and the self-confidence to know when it's time to start making a transition like this.
Got it. So I think he's officially the chairman today, correct? That's his
Hmm.
title. What does that
Yep.
mean, Gorda? How have you guys divvied up roles here?
Yeah, so he does the traditional chairman of the board type stuff. And then we have an ability, he's actually still an employee of the company. And so we use him for consulting and projects right now. And he's got a ton of knowledge about the industry, how all of the compliance filings works. He's got a lot of state by state knowledge. He knows all of our early customers and all of our big customers. So it's really helpful to be able to tap into him to say, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem, or the engineers are trying to figure something out, and he usually knows or has background on the answer that's helpful. So we use him for a lot of consulting right now.
You talked about his original vision, which in good part has been fulfilled. I mean, he's done a lot of his role. There's been a lot of growth. I know you just raised another big chunk of money a couple months ago. How do you kind of evolve that vision? Where does his vision sort of stop and yours begin? I mean, what's the
Hmm.
next step as you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't. Well, I think it's played out that I think I'm taking. I think we have mostly the same vision. I'm really taking his vision, reshaping it a bit in my language and how I like to talk about it. But it really is, if you look at what my vision for where the company's headed, it's very much exactly the same as what Ben had thought about
Hmm.
at the beginning. So I think that's actually good, because it doesn't mean we're making some abrupt change or anything. It's more working the vision into language that I can use as I go engage with all the employees and get them all aligned and rally around the work we're doing. There's just framing and words that work for me, and how to articulate that vision that are
Hmm.
slightly different, but it really is the same vision, um, which I'll share what it is, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
We're
Sure.
talking about it.
Yeah.
And our vision really is to help dispensaries keep solving more and more problems that they face when they're trying to run their business. We want our dispensary customers to thrive and grow and be able to grow their business. Most of our dispensaries are looking for, doing more sales, handling more customers. They don't want to be spending time on compliance and day-to-day tasks. They want to be running their store and helping it grow and thrive and meet the needs of their customers. And that's what we're focused on with Greenbits. Our vision is to keep doing solving our core jobs for our customers really, really well around compliance, and around running the point of sale system. But point of sale is so ingrained in so many inner workings of a dispensary. We're going to start doing more and more around the point of sale system to help our customers even do more as they need to run their business.
And is that in terms of more integrations or feature set, or what does that look like for the customer?
I think it's yes to both. So it's certainly integrations with partners that are a key part of the overall cannabis ecosystem. You need to be working with others to help facilitate a great customer experience. And you see examples of that in other industries, like the restaurant industry, by the way. And so that's part of it. But then we also know from our customers, they don't like being an IT person and having to cobble together a bunch of solutions and make them all work together, and then be trying to figure out problems that come when you're trying to integrate disparate systems and services together. And so where they can have one vendor that's really built a great solution that solves their needs, that's preferable. And so we think there's a lot of opportunities for us to continue to have our software keep doing a little bit more and more as we build out more features. Now, that being said, right now, we know we have a lot of features that are all around our core experience that we're still really focused on. So that's really our primary focus right now, is really building out that core experience and making it really, really great.
Yeah, I think there's different schools of thought about what the most important thing is in a software startup, right? Some people will say it's product, product, product that sells everything. I think there's other companies that are really heavily on sort of the B2B sales team. There's some that have a very detailed marketing strategy. As you came into this opportunity, like, what are the strengths in this businesses and what are the things that you sort of wanted to work on? You thought, well, this could be a lot better in this area.
Hmm. Um, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to build on. That's why I joined the company. Greenbits is in a great position, a strong leadership position. You mentioned the 12,000 dispensaries that we're working with. So
1,200 or
that, or
12,000?
1,200, sorry,
I was going to say, that'd be
1,200.
amazing.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. That'd be more than there are. We have about a third of them. Um, and yeah, so it's a really great place to start with, a company that's doing great. I think broadly our opportunities, this is reflective of the transition of CEOs, is that our opportunities are really to start operationalizing things so that we can better serve our customers and free people up to do more. So there were a lot of manual processes in the company around how we create software, how we service customers, how we do sales. I mean, really across the board. And so we're looking at how do we start using more and more modern tools and build more features into our products that help us service customers better and make sure the software is working really well for our customers, but not requiring a lot of hands-on touch because you frankly can't scale. You'll reach a point where that just doesn't work anymore, and you need to build software that really is scalable. If you look at other examples, like look at a Square or look at Salesforce or some of those other software companies are doing so well, and that's exactly what they've done is they've built in a lot of capability into their systems so that they can handle customers' needs without a lot of people interaction because it just gets in the way of scaling and doing what you want to do.
And labor is expensive, especially in California.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other sort of traction like KPIs, the 1,200 dispensaries, but when you wake up in the morning, like what's the thing or the couple things that you look to? Is there sort of like a leading indicator that you pay attention to?
Sure. There's a bunch. There's a few that are most important. When we look at the overall health of the business and the health of our customers' businesses, actually, processing transaction volume is really the thing that matters most. If our stores are able to process a lot of sales, process a lot of customers through their queues, that shows up as overall transaction volume. And interestingly, with all of the COVID lockdown, shutdown scenario that's going on, our stores have been running about 35% higher sales than versus this time period
Which
last
is
year. So
unbelievable. Yeah.
stores are doing great. Yeah, it is unbelievable. But that's a healthy sign. We've already passed over $1 billion in transactions processed on our platform this year. So we're well on our way to, we'll see, but north of 3 billion is our hope for transaction processing volume this year. So that's a key one that we look at all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the few industries that I think they've benefited from COVID, right? I mean, that's a strong statement, but yeah, I think Corona largely was good for the cannabis industry. One of the questions that I've been asking on this show is, okay, so eventually we're going to get back to some kind of normalcy where people can go to bars and they can go out to clubs. Does the cannabis industry hold on to those other users, to that growth, or is this like, well, we're at home, so we might as well get high?
I think it's going to hold on. I mean, I think it takes a few weeks to establish a new pattern of behavior, and then people are used to doing this new kind of thing. They'll have an opportunity to go back to the other ways of life, but I think if you look at the overall trends of cannabis in the country and sort of the continued legalization, opening up of the market, and the continued increased use of cannabis, it's really just part of a general trend. I think the COVID pandemic has accelerated things a bit, but I don't think it's a one-time thing. I think it's going to be a lasting change that's going to have positive effects on the industry in many, many ways, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important transition. The more people we can get towards cannabis and away from alcohol, at least in its extremes, I think is good for our culture. I mean, without being too political, we're in a very tumultuous time. And I mean, cannabis doesn't result in you looting most of the time, I mean, not to
Yeah,
say
that's
these
right.
people are drunk, but alcohol tends to make people more aggressive and they make bad judgments. And this may be an important part of that transition. Interesting. We talked about how you just raised some more money, 23 million from some big guys. I mean, Tiger Global doesn't get much more credit than that, and Casa Verde, which has been in this industry, been on this show a couple different times. What do you do with that money specifically? Is this more salespeople, more marketing, more all of the above? What's the usage plan there?
It's a bit all of the above, but it's investing in the core capability of the company. That does have a product and support focus. So, for our customers, they care about how well is the product working, meeting their needs, what are the features, and how well do we service the product. And so that's definitely a primary focus. But we're growing the company. We're investing in sales and marketing as well. We've actually been doing a lot of great marketing in the recent few months. That's been great for us. So those are definitely investment areas as well.
What kind of marketing works well? We are fairly limited in this industry, although maybe less so as a software company. What has worked for you guys? What are you going to kind of double down on?
We have a healthy mix of some traditional advertising. Trade shows are important in the cannabis industry,
Mm-hmm.
as far as reaching to those dispensaries as a provider of service. So that's a key thing we do. But online certainly is also a huge channel that's important for us, and that takes various forms. There's search engine optimization, there's paid advertising, and then there's a bunch of email marketing. So it really is a mix of those things. So being part of the industry and the events that happen, and then double down on the contacts you make through the traditional forms of meeting people, and using digital means to then kind of reinforce that is important. So we're looking at a broad mix, but those are really the key categories between the trade shows and then the digital marketing that work well for us.
So at this point, most of your customers probably have tried a couple different POS systems. What do you find when they come to you, when they transition over? What's the biggest reason that they were unhappy with whatever they were using before?
It's a great question. I don't know that there's one big reason. We hear a lot of frustration with competitive solutions, a lot of over-promising too. So that's one common thing we hear is, oh, they said they would do this and it didn't, and they said they would get to this and it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of a mix of those types of things. Generally, though, a lack of capability. So, the dispensary owners are looking for a system that helps them accomplish everything they need and run their business. And it starts with doing sales and tracking, but you got to report properly to the state, and you have to be able to track inventory the right ways throughout the store. And then you got to be able to provide loyalty programs and provide ways to remarket to customers. And so there's a lot you have to do to make the solution work. And then there's a whole reporting piece of things so that managers can understand what's going on with stores. And there's permissions you need so that you can enable bud tenders to do certain things. And so there's quite a bit actually when you dive into the space, and we solve a really rich set. We have a rich set of features. And so we find customers really appreciate that. We've also found some, that get disappointed with some of the things they want from us, and they'll try something else out. And we've had a number of them come back actually pretty quickly and realize, you know what, Greenbits, we wish we had some more stuff, and I wish we had some more stuff right now too in terms of features, but we have a great feature set and people really appreciate that. Another key thing is reliability. And so we've heard people have had some issues with reliability and buggy software and some competitors, and we've been really focused on that in the last since I've been here, and really upping our game. I came from Intuit and TurboTax and QuickBooks, and so I had a certain perspective of what reliable software that you can count on is, and we're now applying that to Greenbits because these are small business owners, just like QuickBooks, small business owners. But for these guys, it's their livelihood. This is their small business and their family. They want to be fed, and it means the store needs to operate well so this business owner can earn enough money to take home and feed their family. And I really recognize how important that is, and kind of think about that in terms of pushing with our team on how important reliability is for our customers.
Yeah, it's very much mission critical, right? It's not like
Yep.
a nice to have or an add-on or something like that. They run their whole business this way. one of the things that I found really interesting, I sold software for 3 years in San Francisco, did the tech thing for a long time before cannabis. And one of the things that I always found interesting is this sort of push and pull between new features, right? The bigger the customer you are, sort of the more sway you have. That's just business. How do you kind of deal with that? I mean, I remember getting pretty outrageous or specific requests for software and often having to say, well, that's in the icebox somewhere, that'll come down later down the road sometime. How do you have that conversation? It's a pretty difficult one to have sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think though, if you talk to the customers, they will lead the way. And I can tell pretty quickly on a couple customer visits, am I having this is broken, you need to fix this right away because it's getting in the way of me doing stuff conversation, or am I having hey, I wish it did this conversation, and you want to get to the wish I did this conversation. And you can tell pretty quickly where you are in terms of that spectrum and what you should be working on. And it's always a balance, as you point out, there's no easy answers in product development, and you gotta always balance. And but I think the customers will lead you to the right answer.
In terms of the engineering team, I know you have a new CTO that you brought in. Do you feel you are properly resourced today on that side? Do you need to grow more? Is that part of what the 23 million is coming will go to? Or how do you feel about the engineering team today, I suppose?
Yeah, Sarvesh is joined just a couple months ago. He's doing great and diving in. He comes from a great background, and he is really leading a transition in how we think about engineering at Greenbits, which is awesome. We are hiring in engineering for sure, and we're looking at what's the right way to hire, what's the right type of talent we're looking for, and then we're also looking at how do we build code at Greenbits, and what's the right process for product development. And so all of that is being thought through right now. I grew up in product management and had a long career in that as well. So the two of us have a great partnership together on rethinking how we build software at Greenbits. And we are driving a lot of change, and the company's responding great to it. Actually, I think we're seeing a lot of positive results in not a very long time already.
That's awesome. Hiring people with the subtext of Corona and sort of the new normal, how do you feel about remote teams and hiring an engineer that's fully remote? Is that sort of part of a necessity today, or how are you guys thinking about that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. The COVID lockdown has definitely given us all the experience of working remotely and seeing how that wells, and it's certainly changed my point of view a little bit too. I came from traditional big office buildings and everyone in a room. But we had, we put good operating mechanisms, and I put in a bunch just in the few, I've been here 6 months now, and we had changed a lot of our, I call them operating mechanisms, or meetings and ways you check in on how work is getting done. And boy, thank goodness we did it when we did it, because all of a sudden we were locked down, everyone was remote, but we had a framework to leverage to make sure that we were getting work done and people knew what was important, and we could all be aligned on how we do things. And it's definitely opened my eyes to the idea that, wow, we really can be super effective remotely. And we can provide people with opportunities to do a better work-life integration and have, some time shifting going on where they need to. People love not having to commute into work. So there's a lot of great things. It's also making us think about what does moving back in look like, because we probably want to just take advantage of the opportunity to do some kind of mixed hybrid model where we do get together, because I do think there's value for sure in the unplanned collaboration that happens when you are together. But the remote work side of it is powerful as well, and it gives us opportunities to not be restricted in our by geography in terms of who we hire, in terms of our talent. That's a huge asset to be able to hire anywhere you want to. And I think providing a better work-life environment for people is also huge as well. So we're looking at how do we get to some kind of integrated model in the future.
Yeah, a very balanced approach. I like that. I think there's a lot of tech companies, Twitter included, have said you never have to come back to work, right? You can always be remote. One of the questions that I think, like transactionally, functionally, it can be done. One of the questions that I have is about culture. Can you build a strong culture completely remote? you miss those little interactions in the kitchen or going to lunch or making a joke or whatever. Is there a way that you're sort of compensating for that? Is there any new ideas about how to build culture remotely?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one we're thinking about. My observation is that culture, it really doesn't just evolve. Culture is something you create, and there's two ways that can go. You can either design it and think about what you want and start taking action that shapes it that way, or you can let it kind of happen by itself, by the people that are typically in some sort of leadership, or at least not on paper, right? They can be a leader in terms of just their style as well. That will create culture as well. And so I'm spending time with my team starting to talk about, well, how do we keep defining and talking about what our culture is, and then think about the ways we can make sure that we're demonstrating and shaping that culture through our actions. And so I think there is a way to shape culture and create it in a virtual environment. I think you just have to be more explicit about it and more proactive about it.
Mm. Got it. Interesting. So it's not just like memes on Slack. That's not enough. That doesn't
Not
build
enough,
culture.
I mean, it's a piece of it, but
It's a piece
it
of
can
it.
be a
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about you. You've had this wonderful background in technology. A lot of companies people know. What appealed to you about the cannabis industry? I mean, you could have done any number of things. Why this company? Why Ben? Why this vision?
That's a great question. I did look at a lot of other opportunities. I wasn't particularly looking for the cannabis, something in cannabis actually.
Sure.
But when I did get the call about, hey, check this business out, it's pretty interesting, it really fit a lot of the things I was looking for. So for me, I was looking for a product-focused company where the product experience really mattered, because that's where my background is, and that's what I enjoy working on. I love working on small business-oriented products where you've got a lot of focus, again, on ease of use and on scaling the product. And Greenbits, is right squarely in that space. I also worked from my prior background working on TurboTax for a number of years. So I have a lot of experience working with products that have compliance filing aspects. And Russ was filing taxes in all 50 states. And so I can leverage a lot of that experience. When we look at the cannabis space, it's really similar. I mean, there's some different mechanics to how it works, but same idea. You're reporting on some transactions so that the government can make sure that they're accounting for taxes properly. And so there's a lot of similarities there that I'm able to leverage in how we think about building our software and our teams, and how we think about enabling us to scale across the country as legalization spreads across the country. So when I kind of looked at, the actual business and where I was interested in focusing, there were a lot of matchups. The other great thing is cannabis is this new exploding industry. It's going to be growing and growing for a while. And so it's not like you're entering an industry that's really, really mature. For me, that's really fun because it creates a lot of opportunity to create your own space, do your own things, learn new things as you go. And so that adds this other element of fun and opportunity to the whole equation that made me say, great, I want to go do this.
Yeah, interesting. I think for a long time, in order for people to get into cannabis, they had to take a pretty sizable pay cut. Without going into too much details, was the compensation package relatively similar? I mean, you must have had a lot of options in traditional tech too. Are we still in that space, or has it sort of evened out a little bit more?
My experience is it's similar to other types of early stage startups.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from my earlier background at working for large Fortune 500 companies, but similar to what I've seen in the other VC funded startup space.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Being that you've been in cannabis 6 months, how do you feel about the industry? I love sort of the outsider perspective. Like, what's different about it than you would have expected, I suppose?
It's interesting. It is a fast moving kind of freewheeling industry that's trying to sort itself out still. It's a little bit of the Wild West, I guess, is the way to say it. So there's a lot going on, and people are a little freewheeling and doing stuff that it's kind of like, go figure it out, which is really fun. You go to like MJ BizCon, the big trade show, and the whole vertical of the industry is there. There's
Oh my
guys
God.
selling
Yeah.
software right next to people that are selling plumbing fittings and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff that still sort of needs to be sorted out in terms of the right channels and who should be talking to who. So it's a little bit of that's trying to be figured out right now.
Mhm.
But that's part of the fun, is it's this new industry that's figuring itself out.
Yeah, and tremendous opportunity for those that are great and want to make a difference. I mean, it really is still a pretty open field in a lot of ways. Um, Given that you haven't been in the cannabis industry that long, how have your friends and family reacted to this choice? I mean, it's becoming more normalized. You're in California, but still, I mean, was there any pushback, or like why did you do that?
Yes, it's a fun question to answer. It's I was surprised, but most people, they went, wow, like, okay, that's an interesting choice. And then they say, wow, okay, I see. They kind of click quickly to the opportunity and the fact it's a new business opportunity that's, legal industry that is going to be growing and present a big opportunity for me and all the companies that are involved. So that was, for most people, what happened. There are a couple of holdouts. There's one or two people I talked to that said, don't do it. You're going to be, labeled as that guy or whatever. But by and large, 90% of the people I talked to, especially after they asked a couple questions and understood it, said, wow, okay, that sounds like a really interesting opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you start breaking it down and thinking about also, I'm sure your company is an eye every day, right? I mean, we're talking about a software business here. Along the lines of consumption, did you have experience with cannabis in the past? How has it evolved today? I mean, is that part of your life at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of my life, not a huge, part, and it hasn't
Sure.
changed dramatically. Actually, I think what's interesting is I didn't really have an appreciation for how much it's like fine wine. So I thought it would be more like Budweiser beer, and okay, you got stuff going on, and I really discovered, like, wow, there's this whole world of cannabis that is really much more like fine wine, where there's a lot of art and there's growers spending all their time figuring out how to develop the right strains, and then there's the whole product side where people are figuring out different products and ways to distribute and consume cannabis. So it's just fascinating to see how big the whole space is, and then that translates into a lot of the problems we're helping our stores actually solve, right? Because they've got to keep track of all this inventory. It creates a lot of diversity and a lot of things they've got to manage to actually meet, and they have to think about ways to sell and a way to consult with customers and introduce them to all of the variation and intricacies. So it's really been interesting to see all that, and I've really come to appreciate how important that is for the industry as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for joining us and being so open and honest. I think hired CEOs are supposed to be boring, but you certainly weren't boring. So,
I
congratulations
try.
on
Thank you
that
for
side.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of as we get out of here, how can we help you? How can the audience help you? You mentioned you're hiring for a number of different roles. This is your chance to use the audience however you'd like, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, we're hiring. If you're a hot salesperson and would like to work for a growing company that's figuring things out, we've got a couple roles in sales, and then on the engineering side, we're looking for great, talented engineers that like to get stuff done. And so, definitely looking for people there as well. And I'd say to keep supporting the stores. It's an interesting time right now. Our stores are, by and large, I think, doing well, but they're struggling with a lot of different challenges with the lockdown and figuring out now how to do different ways of, like, curbside delivery and managing all the customers that are having to wait in line. And so, just I sort of keep that in mind, that the stores are working hard, and the people that are working in those stores are working hard to get things done, and just keep that in mind as we go forward. Hopefully things will get a little easier as we start to open back up. But keep in mind that, when you're in that store and it's not quite the experience you want right now, it's because there's a lot of change going on, and the store owners and people that work in the stores are really trying hard to get through all this.
And be thankful that you're in that store at all, and that we have legal cannabis and it was deemed essential, and all these huge victories. Even though there's always more, I think we have to stop and say, wow, we are in a pretty cool time in this industry. Well, Barry, thanks again. It's been great, and good luck going forward.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was really fun.
Absolutely.